they've been able to get this far, and the Ukrainians have kept them pinned down. But I think that over the longer term, and this looks like it will be a long war of attrition, Putin's going to have a lot of difficulty with manpower issues.
Just sum up, if you can, where Vladimir Putin is at the moment in terms of his position as he enters 2024. It's been a very eventful last 12 months. Obviously, there was that attempted mutiny from the Wagner Group over the summer. He's managed to see that off. Do you think he's ending the year stronger than he started it?
Well, many analysts believe that Russia have the Ukrainians stand up to them for almost 2 years now, but the war has been going on for 10 years. We're coming up to the 10-year anniversary of the war there. Putin, it's almost shameful because he has been making some good moves. It seems that the Ukrainians are having difficulty securing funding, but it appears that the US and the EU have made some workarounds so that the funding should come through in January. That's a really key issue. But it appears that the 2020, from 2023 to 2024, the whole Soviet stock of weapons will be exhausted, and it'll be very difficult for them to replace it. So the position right now in 2023 compared to what it will be in 2024, it looks like it will be declining. Russia's having very difficult getting more people to the front lines. It's been described as a meat grinder. And the Ukrainians, even though they have a smaller population, 34 million versus Russia's 140 million, they have a real will to win. It's an existential crisis for them. And no one thought 2 years ago that the Ukrainians would have held out so long. And this brings back memories of what happened in Vietnam. Even with the most advanced US weapons and the might of the US military, the Vietnamese held out because they were defending their own land. And I think that this is the crisis that Putin will be facing. People inside Russia are becoming more and more disgruntled. It's becoming almost Stalinist there. There's no ability to protest, or everything is very censored. So they have been able to get around sanctions, that's clear, but there are also moves to seize the Russian assets that have, and this is something that will really disturb Russia because that will help fund Ukraine. That's another area where Ukraine could find funding. There are some transatlantic squabbles about this, but it appears that the US is really pushing on this. So we'll see what happens in the G7 and the decision on seizing Russian assets abroad, or at least using the interest off these sovereign funds that have been part of the sanction package.
Anton, how significant is the presidential election in March? Clearly, no one's in any doubt as to who the victor will be. So why does Putin care so much?
Well, I mean, it has been an obsession of his to kind of retain the appearance of everything being legalist, everything being according to the law. Plus, it is sort of legitimization of what he has done in terms of the war the last couple of years. So in the idea of the Kremlin, basically, the number of people that they see coming to the polls, especially the so-called new territories, which is basically Ukrainian land occupied by Russian forces, this will legitimize Putin as, a ruler over this kind of new Russia at war. Obviously, as you have said, it's not going to be a competition, but still they're gonna try to make it into a proper show. And why is it important for us? It's basically everything is kind of on pause before the elections. The Kremlin tries to be very gentle to the Russian public. That's why we're not seeing some tax increases. We're not seeing a major push for mobilization for the war. But after mid-March, after the elections are done, you'll have Putin for 6 years, and they will open up options to escalate, whether it comes to Ukraine or Russian domestic politics and so on.
Theresa, you mentioned the casualty rate that Russia is sustaining on the front line in Ukraine, and people calling it a meat grinder or calling the Russian troops cannon fodder. How long can Putin sustain that for? And does there come a time when he has to start conscripting younger, middle-class people from the big cities of Moscow and St. Petersburg, which politically would be far more difficult for him?
This is a huge problem.
Well, basically,
Russia has a manpower
Sorry,
issue.
Anton. Theresa, go ahead.
Okay, Russia does have a manpower issue, and they won't be able to sustain this. I'll give you an example of what they're trying to do. At mosques, they put a cordon of police around them to get people when they go there for Friday prayers, and they're trying to get people that way. So there are a lot of disgruntled people. There has been recent reporting how Russian soldiers are not allowed to tell their wives or families how difficult it is at the front lines. So many analysts believe that this is going to be a big issue for Putin. We even saw earlier how they were going as far as Cuba to recruit people, and the Cuban government unusually protested that. So manpower will be a big issue. And the fact that they have their troops pinned down already, it will be difficult for them to retrain and rearm some of these, new conscripts. So, to just to train them to go out there. So I think they've been able to get this far, and the Ukrainians have kept them pinned down. But I think that over the longer term, and this looks like it will be a long war of attrition, Putin's going to have a lot of difficulty with manpower issues.
And Anton, to what extent is the most important election for Vladimir Putin in 2024 not his own, but what happens in America?
Well, I mean, they're clearly expecting if it's not Biden, if it's a Republican candidate and Trump specifically, that would open up a lot of possibility. First and by most is Kremlin dreams of basically U.S. halting its support for Ukraine with the financial and military, and it is believed that if it's a Republican candidate and if it is Trump, that would be the case. That would push Kyiv into searching for some sort of compromise that would be acceptable for Moscow. So there's a lot of expectation there that it is going to be a very good case. And, while election is still up there in November, up until the election, Kremlin sees that, the topic of supporting Ukraine is highly problematic for the American sort of internal debate. And they're hoping that for at least the time being, even if it's Biden, that the support would be limited, and Russia could use this time to rearm its army to get more people to the front. So, I mean, whatever happens, the dynamic we're seeing today is sort of understood in Kremlin as a favorable.